Hey everybody, Pete from the GenWell Project here. Happy Tuesday. Another great day as we all work our way through COVID-19 and we figure out how we can make the best of every day that we have. Very excited about our conversation today with Christine Franklin from iGenOttwa, an organization that I've been aware of for about a year now. Because a lot of the work that they do has a lot of synergy to the work that we do at the GenWell Project. Before we get started, though, I'll tell you that the GenWell Project is a human connection movement whose mission is to make the world a happier and healthier place by reminding people about the importance of face-to-face social connection and inspiring them to take action. Connected Conversations is a series of conversations that we launched at the start of COVID-19 to connect people with ideas, tips, tools, and people who can help us all manage our way through COVID-19 the very best way possible. As I mentioned, we've got Christine Franklin with us today from iGenOttwa. Christine is one of the co-founders of iGenOttwa, a volunteer-run-led organization initiative that launched last year to promote the value of intergenerational connections. iGenOttwa recently launched a Good Neighbors Ottawa campaign to promote the need to engage with neighbors this winter. They're also collecting holiday cards and art in support of Santa for Seniors, a local initiative to provide gift baskets for seniors who will be spending the holiday season on their own. I don't think there's anybody who can disagree with any of the initiatives that they've got going in Ottawa. So I'd like to welcome Christine to the show, and we're going to have a great conversation about how we can help get people connected. Christine, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Christine. Honestly, the work that you do, and we've connected initially through social media,
That's right.
because that's how most of us are getting connected these days. And it was wonderful to see, some of the synergies in the messaging that you're putting out, and obviously the work that we're trying to do at the GenWell Project as well. And there is no one solution to social connection. We're so far behind the 8 ball in regards to understanding the issue and then the research behind it, that it is going to take a lot of different groups, different organizations coming together and really trying to spread the message. So it's great to have you on the show today. What I'd love to start off with, as we do with every one of our interviews, Christine, is we check in on the caregiver, because too often we forget about the people that are reaching out and trying to help the rest of the world. And we need to make sure that we're putting the oxygen mask on ourselves so that we can help other people. So before we get into what iGenOttwa does and what you've been up to, love to hear how you're doing. How are you holding up 8-9 months into COVID-19?
I'm doing well. I feel very fortunate. My family and friends are healthy. I was thinking the other day, we're into month 9 now. And when you think back about, those early weeks of all the changes that we needed to make, our ways of doing things and our ways of being, if you will. So, it's been quite a time, this adjustment to new patterns and these realities right now. And it's, leading into the holiday season, talking about new patterns. I've been here in Ottawa for many, many years, but we always fly home to Halifax every year, right? And this year, that won't be happening. Likewise, in the summer, we always get home to Halifax in the summer. So, this is where we'll have to rely more on technology and creative ways of engaging, and it'll be a different sort of Christmas. So these sort of things that you're aware of, that you're dealing with, but overall, very, very fortunate.
I think that response is very similar on the being fortunate side. Is most of the interviews that we've done, people have called out, hey, there are a lot of people that are struggling much worse off than maybe you or I are. If you're not worried about food, water, shelter, safety, or security right now, you're in a great place.
Absolutely.
And if I went up one more level on Maslow's hierarchy, if you aren't worried about love and belonging, then you're really killing it right now, because those are really the areas that we need to be focused on, are those fundamental needs that we have as human beings. And obviously that's where your focus and our focus has been, in trying to make sure that people get through. And I think, as you talked about, there will be a lot of change this holiday season. And I think getting on it early and having those conversations and figuring out what that plan is will be really important for people as we move forward.
Absolutely. Yes.
Tell me, can you tell us and tell all the viewers, tell us a little more about iGenOttwa, and maybe what the inspiration was behind iGenOttwa to help, initially getting intergenerational connections strengthened in the region, but maybe there's a story or two behind it.
So iGenOttwa is about focused on fostering intergenerational connections, really promoting the value of those relationships to individuals and the broader community. So 4 of us decided to launch this early last year. So there's 4 of us: myself, Martha Jekyll, Deanne Drouin, Nicola Mall, who decided that upon learning about something called Intergenerational Day that had been started 10 years ago in BC, that wouldn't it be great if Ottawa proclaimed the day? So it's a day, June 1st, that celebrates those intergenerational connections. It is something that has been officially recognized in many, many cities across the country. And some provinces, Ontario, for instance, has proclaimed in perpetuity, but not Ottawa. So we thought, why not? Let's put in our request to the city and see what happens. And they accepted it. And then we were, 4 of us, because we all have our day jobs, this is our volunteer effort, deciding, okay, let's see what we can do in 3.5 months. And the community response was tremendous. And we had some key supporters early on. We really used social media, and we managed to get this website, which is a lovely story on its own, for free through the support of a company and this other initiative in the city. And we were also lucky it was on a Saturday, right? So we had already some things going on in our community that would be bringing different ages together. So we piggybacked on that. So we received a wonderful response.
That's amazing. And now this started, when did this get started? It's about a year ago. So it's pre-pandemic, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was February. We heard from the city. It was February 2019, and we had our first intergenerational day, June 1st. And because it went so well and people were really resonating with the idea, we decided that we were going to then turn it into something that we worked on year round. So promoting, organizations and initiatives that were going on in the city, but also trying to be a catalyst, bringing different groups together. And we had some really interesting things planned for last June. So June 2020, where our focus was going to be on benches, and then we had to pivot.
Yeah, everybody's been pivoting over the last 9 months, that's for sure.
Exactly.
So was there an issue that you had identified, or had you saw the research? And I actually printed off a piece of research or an article that kind of highlights the multi-generational benefits, but was there something that really drove it? Did you notice that there was something missing out there? And then I would actually build on that and say, what do you think COVID has done to the challenges that might have been there before?
So I think for the 4 of us, this idea of the importance of relationships between younger and older people, that really had resonated. It's a very busy world, busy lives, and there can be quite limited opportunities for to cultivate those sort of relationships, especially, extended families. Grandchildren are not in the same cities as their grandparents. And I think another thing was there was no organization here in Ottawa that was focused on this intergenerational angle. I know Toronto has, it's the intergenerational partnerships, Toronto Intergenerational Partnerships, and there's something out in Calgary, and there's other others, but not in Ottawa. So we thought, because the response had been so positive, that we thought we could try and kind of choose where we think we could have an impact, where maybe other organizations weren't filling that space, to really promote the importance of bringing these different ages together.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And as I listen to you, I think a couple things come to my mind. And certainly, I think the world has changed dramatically over the last few decades. When we do a lot of corporate speaking for the GenWell project, we say, look, we've lived in the most fast-paced, pressure-filled, and fast and distracted world. We lived in the greatest growth world time in the history of the world. And the interesting thing is, I think we just unconsciously lost those connections. And I don't know if we really understood the value of those connections, multi-generational, intergenerational, until now. We're waking up in the middle of a pandemic, and now we're recognizing, hey, wouldn't it be great? And certainly there's like a babysitting benefit, but I actually think it's really the storytelling and the passing of experiences. You know, one of the inspirations behind the GenWell project was my mom, who grew up in the Second World War in Northern Ireland. And she always told me about how they made it through challenging times like a pandemic. But for her, it was a war. This is the closest thing I think we've had to a war. And she said it was by the community coming together and everybody supporting each other. And I think those stories and that experience, if anybody has probably gone through challenging times that can share them, it's probably those that are a little older than us that have those stories to tell. So I think oftentimes we've gone through this adjustment and we haven't recognized it. But I think what you're trying to do is help people actually acknowledge, hey, those intergenerational relationships are so important. Is that part of it?
Yes, and it goes both ways, right? The older adults, you know, with their experience and their expertise and their perspectives, sharing that with the younger generations. But likewise, I mean, the younger generations really bring a lot of energy, new perspectives, new skills. We can get into technology later, but that can really help older generations. So it really is, I think it's both ways, enriching both ways, cultivating those.
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody wins, and even you know the part in between, which we'll call it if we got the youth and we've got the seniors, then I think the opportunity for parents to continue the relationship with their parents, and also the time for them to have their own life and chase their own dreams. So it really is a cohesive opportunity for a family unit to be part of helping young people grow. But let's also think about sustaining, the older people that, oftentimes, I've said before that I think about 20 years ago, we started to outsource our seniors to third-party caregivers and thought that was the solution to the challenge of the fast-paced world, that we didn't have time. So let's find another solution. But at the end of the day, the research shows that a lot of seniors in long-term care, they're surrounded by people, but as we know, for everybody in society, you can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. And really recognizing it and acknowledging it, and the work that you're doing to get people to actually be conscious of the importance of that relationship, I think is really, really important work.
Well, and also because these issues of disconnection and loneliness, it often, I think the research, highlights that when you're hitting key life events, wide range of ages, and I think in some ways we're structured around where our lives are kind of streamed, these silos of largely maybe keeping to your age group more than in the past, where there were maybe more opportunities to come together, a wide range of activities. So then we're in the world of, how do we try and create more opportunities to connect individuals, of different generations. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, the older adults and the young. I mean, there's also, the 20 somethings can benefit, and all sorts of different groups. It's just these different ages bring different perspectives. right?
Yeah, I
And
think
really benefit
actually
from
you mentioned the word catalyst, and it's something we like to use a lot as well, which is I think, many people have forgotten how important the relationships are. But even if you do and did recognize it pre-pandemic, the world was moving so quickly that most of us weren't making time to make it happen. And I also think that, just by creating occasions, we know, look at what's about to happen with the holidays, how important the holidays are for so many people to get connected, because we have given people permission around holidays and special occasions to get together. And those are the occasions that many people look forward to in building those relationships. And now, in this particular case, we're not going to get to it, but we will get back to those occasions, and we will get connected again. And hopefully, with continued messaging from yourself and from the work we're doing at the Gen Well Project, we can continue to raise the consciousness of people about how important those relationships are. And to your point, both for the older generations, for the younger generations, and frankly, for society in general.
But there's no question, there's this added urgency right now, right? We saw, come March, of how people really sprung into action, that there were essential needs that were needing to be addressed, ensuring those who were not going outside, that they had groceries delivered, their prescriptions filled, that people really address that. So, here in Ottawa, and I know in Toronto, small kind of ad hoc volunteer initiatives popped up, which was very heartwarming to respond to those essential needs, the community needs. But again, we're now into month 9, and we're going to go into the winter that brings added challenges in terms of mobility, for instance. So even those who maybe were doing fine and feeling quite independent may lose some of that independence just because of what is ahead and the bad weather, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this challenge of how to ensure those that have needs. So this is even apart from the social connections, that they are connected with people that have people who are checking in on them and asking, and that they are comfortable asking for help. So that is one of the issues going into this winter. We're going to have to be proactive, reaching out, even for those you think might be okay. Maybe you err on the side of, you know what, I'm going to give a little call and just sense to see how things are going.
Yeah, so much of what you said there, Christine, resonates with me. Certainly in times of crisis, we are an amazing human species. That, the original inspiration behind Gen Well was because of the blackout of 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And what you saw was people connected when we go through a crisis. I'd call that probably the easiest crisis, because all people did was turn off our phones and TVs, and, we went and got connected because, for most of us, it was really just a matter of the distractions were turned off. We're really good in times of crisis. We've seen it at the start of the pandemic. Everybody's out there thinking about people, because when we go through it, and I think the power of the pandemic is that we're going through it together. So it's not like, an unfortunate situation like somebody might lose a job separate from a pandemic, or a relationship issue, or an illness, or something goes on. And this is one of the, the points of the Gen Well Project, is helping people recognize that in a pandemic, we all come together. That's a beautiful thing. But that people pre-pandemic and as we move forward will go through challenges behind their own four walls, and that we all can be there by building these relationships before the crisis comes, whether that's because it's for our benefit, or maybe, and you've touched on this a few times, is maybe it's actually just about raising that consciousness that if somebody's going through a challenge and you pick up the phone or knock on the door and just say, hey, that right now, especially as we go into the winter, we can make a massive difference. And, it may just be about social connection. Point. It will be about, hey, actually, I'm out of groceries, or my kids are so busy, I need to go get something from the drugstore or whatever. And each of us play in supporting people right now? And I think that's a great question to lead into the Good Neighbors project that you have going in Ottawa. A little about the Good Neighbors program, because I think that's probably a little bit about what that program's all about.
So it was in response to some of the conversations we were having among the four of us, that many connections have been made since March, and some people may be very well supported going into this winter, but there was a particular concern for those who may have been doing fine, through the summer, but perhaps weren't so well connected. Having those people that you feel comfortable asking for help, or having someone who you feel at least is kind of just aware that you're in their, your vision, when you're on the street, that kind of looking out for each other. And so the idea was maybe we need to have some prompts to start looking at our neighbors with the different eyes, kind of more protective eyes of what may be needed. We were particularly concerned about those who may, that organizations or family aren't necessarily in their support network, and that neighbors close by, those who know, could maybe be the ones that they could turn to if there was some reaching out, some small gesture to let people know, I'm here, for the person to think about what sort of things maybe they might need some help with, or be able to offer help. And so that was the thinking, that we needed some sort of prompts to kind of give permission or a little encouragement that we're gonna have to look out for each other this winter. And so our idea was we devised a good neighbor checklist, just as a little tool. Consider who might need some neighborly assistance, some support this winter. Think about the sort of things that you might be able to help with. And maybe it is just calling every couple days, checking in. But, maybe you're able to help with groceries, especially in poor weather. Maybe you can help with groceries. Maybe you can help with their front walkway for an elderly neighbor. If it's really bad weather, maybe walking their dog, posting mail. These sort of activities, at least offering what you can. And so that was kind of the key thing. And another thing that we had really emphasized, that it's okay to ask for help, that people want to help, because that is, I think, one of the real challenges. If you're already feeling, let's say, disconnected, it is hard maybe to ask for help. And also our kind of societal values that promote, independence and self-reliance. Well, there are other, collective values of what it means to be in community with each other, right? And that includes supporting each other. So that was the idea. We thought we needed to have a little prompt that, wouldn't it be great going into the winter if everyone kind of had maybe one or two neighbors that they were looking out for, or other small acts that they could do to kind of cultivate that sense of neighborhood and that sense of belonging on your block or in your building.
Yeah, honestly, Christine, I'm inspired by your words, because I think these are the words that we are all waking up to. And, right off the bat, we heard a lot of people use the phrase "in this together." And although everybody's experiencing the pandemic in different ways, and some, have many more challenges than others, the reality is everybody is being impacted. And I think your comments, touch on a couple things. First off, we know human connection is critical to our health, happiness, and longevity, although most of us were never educated on it. So we are starting from ground zero there. but that simple opportunity to connect with anybody. We'll say neighbor because I think that's the geographically easiest one, which is they're right beside you. And you know, with 50% of Canadians not knowing their next door neighbor's name pre-pandemic, the opportunity to use the pandemic as the catalyst that actually says, hey, you know, I've seen you in the driveway 800 times. I've waved at you. I don't know your name, but hey, I noticed that you had your kids running around, or I noticed that you hadn't left the house in a week. It's about, you know, I think a lot of what you're talking about, raising people's consciousness, both on the impact of disconnection and lack of support, and B, the simple steps that we can all take that can make all the difference in the world for other people.
And I think that how, right?
Yeah.
Again, that just that encouragement of when you're walking on your street and after a snowfall, and it's, you know, a couple days later and you're seeing that it hasn't been cleared, that, you know, if you're wondering about someone, that you reach out. And if you don't have their phone number and you don't have their email address, and maybe that is a situation on many blocks, then just pop a note in their mailbox, just to some way to reach out. Because wouldn't it be terrible, you know, that behind the door, that there's some real needs that are not being met and no one has reached out. So it's more just those different eyes, I think, of paying attention when you're going on your walks. If something doesn't seem quite right, or you're wondering, be proactive and kind of go with that instinct. I think that's as opposed to feeling, oh, I don't want to intrude. I don't, you know, all those reasons where we feel maybe it's not appropriate for me to reach out, I might offend, or, you know, these sort of things, because you never know. But I think, again, going into this winter, I think it's going to be really important that we be proactive.
I think it's a beautiful idea. You know, we've heard lots of people talk about writing letters, but I think the simple act of writing a note and dropping it in your next door neighbor's mailbox, because the fear may be on both sides, and this is all psychology that we play in our own heads. Oh, to your point, you know, oh, maybe they don't want to be disturbed. Maybe I'll get in the way. Maybe. But the reality is, hey, if you write a note and you just say, hey, just so you know, I'm thinking about you. Funny enough, our neighbor across the street, if you can believe this, tomorrow turns 100 years old. And so everybody on the street is dropping a birthday card into his mailbox before the morning tomorrow, so that he's going to wake up and recognize that, you know, his kids they visit once in a while, but that he's not alone, and that even though he can't see everybody, that we're all here for him. And
that's wonderful.
Come together. And it, you know, again, oftentimes it takes that catalyst of a birthday or something, an occasion, but wouldn't it be great, to your point, if we could just think about being, and I'll use the word generous, on a regular occasion, especially as we go through a challenging time like a pandemic. Let me ask you this question. So, you know, you're doing a lot of amazing work there. It's obviously specific to the Ottawa region, but I know that you and us at the GenWell Project, we have an aspiration to see more people across this country from coast to coast, you know, raise consciousness and take actions like the ones that your suggestion. You know, how do we get more people to think like this across the country? Obviously, we got little organizations. We got organizations across the country that are working on various aspects, connecting kids, connecting seniors, you know, connecting, you know, I know one of the biggest videos that we've had viewed on our YouTube page is a young, a mother just after childbirth talking about loneliness and isolation that she faced. We've got executives, 45% of executives say that they feel isolated and lonely at times. So this isn't a young or old issue. This is an everybody issue. How do you think we raise that consciousness for everybody about the need to reach out and build connection in their lives?
You know, it's complicated. You have all sorts of wonderful initiatives that are taking place. Yours, you know, your efforts that you've been doing through the years, because it doesn't necessarily just happen. But I think once something happens, you can have this ripple effect. So I'll give you an example of another initiative that we have going on right now. So there's this local senior center, the Good Companions, that have this initiative of gift baskets for seniors who may be alone in during the holiday season. So they've done this in previous years. This year, we offered to see about collecting holiday cards and artwork from students and others to put in the gift baskets. So, our goal was, I think, 300 baskets. So what we have seen for an initiative like this, how it was really resonated, and how various people, teachers and schools, have wanted to get on board. They want to be able to contribute to these baskets that, instead of just things that they'll pull out, they're going to see something very heartwarming, handmade for them. So, and the response, right? I think we're at 750, and we may be more. Like, things are still coming in. So, but you think about that, this example of one small act that, because someone contributed to that, may now start them thinking about their own kind of circles on their street with others of other things. So maybe some of them may end up making other holiday cards for seniors on their street, maybe. So I think that it's very important to have tools or these catalysts that have an impact, and then you just don't know how it goes. So Intergenerational Day, if more cities got really engaged in proclaiming this June 1st Intergenerational Day right across the country, wouldn't that be great? Because it's a call to action throughout the year, right? Now, another thing which I find really interesting, a couple of years ago, it was Future Cities Summit held in Toronto. And one of the speakers was a woman named Tessie Britton, very, very active, doing this marvelous work in London, in a borough in London, about participatory cities. And some really important design thinking about how you engage people, bring people together, for projects, and kind of the stepping stones of how you build those relationships kind of for a common purpose that bring community together. Now, what has been interesting is that this work is being piloted here in Canada. So if you look it up, it's participatorycanada.ca. And so there are some pilot projects taking place now in Toronto, in Montreal, and Halifax. And so I'm very hopeful, that some of the work, the tools, how do you build kind of robust social infrastructure, that some of those learnings can be passed on, because I think there's a great capacity for people to give to others, to want to connect, but there's a real challenge, I think, with the how. And it goes to your point, right? Needing a catalyst. And so to what extent we need to kind of shift our thinking about what it means to be a neighbor, a citizen, a friend, shifting the thinking more, I think, is really important. So there's a lot of work, but I think if all of us just could individually take action and reach out to someone, do things differently. It's not necessarily our own, our usual people that we're chatting to. It's looking a little further afield, who you might reach out to that would love to have that connection. And even a small step, right? A small act like that can make a difference. Because if you don't do that, it doesn't lead, some are just one-offs, but others, it can lead to something quite meaningful. So it's it's really, I think a lot about barriers. How do we overcome barriers to act?
Yeah, I think those are beautiful words. One thing I'll throw in there, and it's only from our experience, and it's again part of the inspiration behind the GenWell project is, most of us were educated on the importance of physical activity. We had the government launched participation back in 1971. We've been educated on eating well because we've had the food guide since 1942. And now the research shows that social connection is a better indicator of our health than smoking, obesity, and high blood pressure. And I guess my question would be, what role do you think education, in the sense of we want people to take these little actions, but maybe people don't recognize how important, and I think for two things. Number one, connection is good for my health and for your health. But number two, having purpose and meaning. And I heard you talked about how so many people have been interested in contributing to the gifting for the seniors over the holidays. I think, especially going through the pandemic, I think people are awakening to the importance of having purpose and mission in their lives, because many of us were just on the treadmill, running along, trying to get through the day, get through the week, and take a deep sigh at the end of the week so we could take a break. But what role do you think education will play or can play if we could educate the society as much as we know to eat fruit and vegetables and work out 20 or go for a walk 20 to 30 minutes a day? I believe that most people don't understand just how important human connection is and the difference they can make. What do you think about the role of education?
So I think that it's very important. I think some of it is kept as somewhat abstract. Like, people know it's good to connect. If you're disconnected, it doesn't, it doesn't feel good. I think they don't fully know the research to what extent, how good it is. But again, I think the education needs to go also deeper about what it means to build relationships. It can be challenging. There's risk involved, and especially for those who are disconnected, it can be actually more difficult, right? To do what is needed to reach out. That often it can be a little bit of a downward spiral, that you don't have that confidence or even a judgment of what you share and how to build those sort of connections. So I think when I think of the that education piece, yes, it's important, but it's the how, and that it can be challenging, and just the importance of kind of keep going and kind of taking risk of getting to know other people, right? So I think there's part of that, because it's not just about connection is good. It's and then you get into the whole world of introverts and extroverts and different personalities, and what you need in terms of social stimulation and engagement is different maybe from what me and someone else. And so we all have our own personalities. We have our own needs as to what is important. Because, that whole issue of loneliness, it goes to, I'm trying to remember the details, but kind of it's this, do you have enough, numbers and quality of relationships that make you happy? Are you feeling deficient? So it's such a complicated question. So I think actually the education should explain that complexity of that we all have different needs, but we are social beings. Interdependency is key, but it can vary, and it's okay. You try and connect with someone, you know what, that's maybe not what they need, and that's okay. And you can try again with someone else. You offer help, and maybe they don't need it. But even, I go back to this accepting help. And sorry, I'm chasing a sunbeam that keeps following me.
Oh, no problem. It's all good. You look great. You look great.
Here. So, this issue of, if you ask someone for, offer help and they say, no, I'm fine. It's really, I think, important to do that follow-up. Are you sure? Because I'm going to the grocery store. Are you sure you don't need any milk? Are you sure? That signals that actually you weren't just being polite, but you were actually serious with your request, that it's not any trouble. And even end off and say, okay, well, if you don't need anything, I'll call again. When I'm going next. And if you need something, you can let me know. Because people may be quite reluctant to accept that help, even when they need it. And so I think we have to be wise to that and push it a little further and say, don't be reluctant. I'm really happy to do this. So if not today, I'll check in again. Those sort of messages, I think, are really important. So it's, that education piece, it's taking us into that next level of the complexity and the challenges of dealing with another person and doing your best. And it doesn't always, go necessarily as you would like, but isn't it great that you reached out, and especially for this COVID winter? Yeah. You know what? Err on asking, and keep asking different people, and keep regularly checking in, because it's going to be a long winter.
Yeah. So much of what you said there, Christine, resonates. Certainly, encouraging people to take action right now throughout the course of the winter, because we have a catalyst called COVID-19. We're waking up, isolated, disconnected, in some cases lonely. That it's now that we need people to reach out. But and you're right, when it comes to education and the knowledge about the loneliness and the impact that has on our health, the knowledge is greater than it's ever been before, but also understanding that it is subjective, to your point, which is, an introvert who needs human connection as much as an extrovert, they just may not need it as often. And really helping people recognize the impact that it have, because now the research shows, and there was a new piece of research, I don't know if you saw this, 2 months ago, out of Massachusetts General Hospital, the single greatest action that we can all engage in to prevent depression is social connection. I think most people actually think that that's going for a run or a walk or eating better, because that's what we were told to do. But we now know, based on the other research, is it's the single greatest indicator of happiness in our health, happiness in our lives, reduces anxiety and depression, increases empathy, compassion, resilience, strengthens our immune system. So it keeps us healthy by having that social network around us, and can increase our chances of longevity. But to your point, for everybody, that combination of what is social connection is different. And what the research also shows is it's not just the meaningful relationships. And I think a lot deep, meaningful relationships in the family, but it is those casual collisions on the street when you get a chance to walk out of your house and you can say to your neighbor, "Hey neighbor, how
Absolutely.
you doing?" Or the barista or whoever.
Because it's these looser connections, right? Of, if you went to a coffee shop or someplace and someone knew your name, it kind of shifted a little bit how you felt that sense of belonging. And so it's funny, just yesterday, we heard about this lovely little initiative of some elementary school kid age, that in their neighborhood had wanted to choose a tree in the neighborhood where they wanted neighbors just to bring an ornament to add. And they put it on the communal mailbox.
I love it.
Said where the tree was, that it'd be great if everyone could bring an ornament. So when you go by a tree like that, it kind of shifts how you feel about your neighborhood, because you're thinking, oh, my ornament is on that tree. And that is a tree that is bringing real pleasure to others, warm hearts. And so it can be such a small little gesture, that really can have an effect, I think, within a neighborhood, within a community, right?
Yeah, I think
So,
that's such a great symbol of community when you get that, the Christmas tree or whatever it is, where we all contribute to it. Because I think that's probably part of the challenge we have in society, is that there's so few of those occasions where we actually work together on our streets and in our communities. And it's those occasions when we can do that. I think that's actually such a beautiful symbol of, something that everybody contributes, that's still visible. I'm growing my mustache for Movember, and one of the powerful things about Movember is that everybody gets to see the mustache. So anybody who's got a mustache is part of a community, so it's a visible sign. And I think that's probably a challenge for a lot of things that are out there, is how do we make it more visible for people to be a part of that community.
and I guess we also think, so with iGenOttwa, post COVID, our plans, where we were more focused on that physical infrastructure of benches. That's what we had been hoping to do last June, right? And so we had to pivot. But it's, holding on to some of these connections. Once you've learned your neighbor's name, and you're, there, you don't hopefully lose that. And that we need to hopefully have this, where when we're through this crisis, that these key learnings of how important it is that we're looking out for each other, and these connections of all kinds, whether it's the closer connections all the way to the looser ones, where it's just, your ornament was on a tree. These are the things that are so necessary, going into what comes next, right? Because it goes back to why you
exist.
found, exactly, right?
Yeah.
This issue of disconnection this has been ongoing, and now we're in this where things like essential needs, we want to make sure all our neighbors are being taken care of, let alone having those wonderful social connections. But what comes after? And we need to really cultivate, that sense of community and belonging with, so that everyone feels that someone is caring about them and wanting to check in with them. I think that's important. So
those are beautiful words, Christine, and I couldn't agree with you more. That sense of belonging is what we all need. And when we think of what comes out of this, if we haven't learned through 9 months now, but however many months, if we haven't learned how important human connection is to our health and happiness by the end of this pandemic. And let's also be clear that we aren't going to jump back to large concerts in the park right away. Mm-hmm. That it's still going to be, and we had our campaign called Show Us Your Bubble. It's going to be those that you're closest with, that you're going to slowly expand to friends and maybe some neighbors. So champion those occasions. Make sure you value those opportunities to get connected, because that's who you're going to be connected with.
Yeah, and be creative, right? Use technology, use the mailbox, use what you can, that might work. Like, we're going to have to be more creative with our acts of kindness, right? We are restricted, but I guess that's our key message, and it's even embedded in our kind of the founding of iGenOttwa, this idea of small acts, right? Yeah. It starts with hello. That reaching out, and some of it can be just that, but it's still, even that can make a difference. And sometimes it can become so much more, but it's small acts of, neighborliness, of kindness, that if you start with that, even that, right, can make such a difference to someone else. And you may never know. That's the other thing. You never may know the impact of that kind word, that note in the mailbox, that it had on someone's life. So we're all into, we're very focused on the importance of small acts that can really make a difference.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful words, and I think you almost just touched on, do you have two or three, you've touched on it throughout the conversation, two or three tips that you would say. I love the card in the mailbox. Give it. What would be one or two other things that you would encourage people to do over the course of the coming weeks and months as we go through this challenging, disconnected time?
Well, wouldn't it be great if everyone chose one or two people to call and regularly check in with? And especially if there are those who may be particularly vulnerable during the winter months. So seniors, could be single parents, those who are dealing with some disability. There can be a wide range of people, but it may also be people you would not suspect. So basically, as long as if you're reaching out beyond your immediate circle, trying to just extend your care a little further, that I think could be something really, really important. So that if can you imagine if everyone in, your city, my city, everyone felt that there was that connection with someone that was checking in on them. That to me would be huge, right? Because then that allows for everything else. So I think that would be our key message, and that the heartwarming little things that you can do can make a difference. On my street, seeing some hand printed in a front window, have a happy day. We're getting through this or something. It's lovely messages, and it makes a difference, right? You hear some of these or read some of these lovely messages. So I think small gestures, connect, reach out, don't be shy, be proactive with your kindness, because it's needed. Our community is going to need it, and many in our communities are going to have a challenging winter. So that sort of support that we can extend, so important.
I do agree with all your suggestions, and we launched our Just One More campaign at the start of the pandemic, which is just to say exactly what you said. Hey, who's that one person today who you could reach out to? So with all those beautiful ideas, let's find that one person each day, because if we've got do we have 35 million people? If we could get half of us to think about the other half, I think we'd make the world a happier and healthier place.
And I'll just add this,
go.
That lead up to holidays, extra attention may be given, but I'm worried about January, right? Because it's January, nothing so much to look forward to. And we have many, many, many weeks of the winter. So in many ways, January, make sure you're touching base with people, because that's maybe when some of the real struggles start, happening. So I just highlight the importance of January.
Yeah, well, I think again, as we look forward, it's not about one day or 1 week or 1 month. This is about getting people to think about this every day of the year.
Yeah.
And the health challenges that we're facing from COVID are just the tip of the iceberg of the challenges that we're going to face as a society. So, building and strengthening those relationships, whether it's, I talk a community much broader than your street. I talk about it as your family, your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, anybody that you look at as part of your community are the people that we need to be thinking about, whether we can help them or they can help us, just through a simple, your point of act of kindness, and certainly starting with some human connection is a beautiful thing. So the last question we ask everybody, Christine, is when this is all over, when we have a vaccine, when we can get back to the new normal, we'll call it, how do you think you're going to celebrate?
Well, I will be flying to Halifax in short order. Not having to deal with any quarantine. That will be definitely on the priority list. But it's also, those simple things, right? Of meeting a friend for a coffee, having a few friends over for supper. It's all those simple things that I look forward to. But yes, Halifax, getting to Halifax is
that's a beautiful. And to your point, and we'll wrap up there, but I think your point is really valid, which is, maybe we took all those little things for granted before, and it took a wake up call, or what are the great reset that I'm hearing more people talk about, the awakening that those little things, that coffee at the coffee shop, the dinner, the barbecue, the time we spent with other people. We've been told by many psychology theorists for decades and centuries how important community was to our health and happiness. And I think now, for those who've grown up in my generation, now it's being put front and center to realize just how important it is. So Christine, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for iGenOttwa. Thank you for helping make the world a happier and healthier place. And I look forward to staying connected and seeing how we can continue to collaborate and help people from coast to coast in this country. Because as you've commented a couple times, we're going to need it more than ever getting through COVID, and hopefully we'll maintain it beyond. So
great. Well,
thank you.
And the four of us at iGenOttwa are very keen to carry on and promote. So we look forward to connecting again. So thank you so much for having me on.
Great to have you. Yourself an amazing day.
Great. You too. Thanks.
Ciao.